All right, let's crack on. Okay, I make that 10 o'clock. Let's bust a move. Helen, are you ready?
I'm ready, Chairman.
Brilliant. All right. Good morning and welcome to Dorset Council's first People and Health Overview Committee. I must admit, whilst we're being honest, I was quite hesitant about accepting this role. I hate meetings for the meeting's sake, and I was apprehensive about taking on a role I viewed as glorified scrutiny, and that's really not me. For those of you that know me, I'm a doer and not a scrutineer. That wasn't meant as an attack on scrutineers, but that's the way it is. However, it was only really by going through the council's constitution I realised how powerful and how much potential is in this committee. For starters, this isn't a scrutiny committee, a point I'll be making later again in this agenda. We are very much a policy creating committee, and creating policy is a leadership role. Our policies will guide our council to make better decisions, and our views and steers will shape our council, and that's really important that this is a leadership role. There's actually quite a lot of autonomy given to this committee through the constitution, and our remit of people and health is almost one of the broadest. I know that Daryl's here, and I know that his committee is incredibly broad too, which is good, as it gives us a lot of scope to be able to look at many different things. Now, some of you may know me from my work on the Community Safety Partnership, and the Community Safety Partnership it is a very prescriptive meeting, and it has lots of legal bump. However, in this committee, we have quite a large degree of freedom to be able to push whichever way we like, and to make this committee our own. And I think that's really key. And I believe that our first policy should be to create our policies and to get our committee how we like it. And I think that's why today agenda items 5 and 6 would be crucial. So we know Dorset has many challenges and toxic issues, and actually quite a lot of them are found in people's, so children's and adults. If I can mention things like the graph of doom being one of them, EHCPs, etc. over in children's. So we need some real out of the box thinking. We need ideas and policies that are going to improve the lives of our residents, and I'm a firm believer that nobody has a monopoly on good ideas. So my steer to you will be there will be very little party politics in this committee. If we have a good idea, we run with it, no matter where it's come from, and I'm really keen on that. I'm also understanding that formal meetings are not necessarily the natural breeding ground for policies and ideas. If you're like me, policies and ideas come to me probably about 1 o'clock in the morning when I'm trying to sleep. So having a formalised meeting perhaps isn't the best way of doing it, but we'll touch on that on 5 and 6. Like many of my late night ideas, and I can't see you at the moment, Daryl, but I bet you're smirking. My ideas need a lot of support and a nurturing environment and feedback to turn concepts into a tangible reality. And I think that's where I believe our role of our committee is, to formulate the good ideas, flesh them out and create the policy. And for that to happen, we have to be able to work together in a collaborative way. So as I look through the membership of this committee, I see that we're actually quite an eclectic bunch. However, we do bring a lot of experience, wealth, knowledge and passion with us, and I think that's really key. So let's do this and let's make Dorset better. So if you'd like to, members, I'd just like to go and push through and just for yourselves to introduce yourselves and actually how you'd like to be addressed throughout the meeting. So I'm Andrew Kirby and I'm your chairman, and address me as Andrew. Pauline.
Pauline Batstone, Blackmore Vale Ward councillor, and I'm presuming that we're using Christian names in this situation.
Well, it's up to you, Pauline. You can be vice chair if you'd like.
I might respond better than that. Otherwise, I might be doing other things.
Fine, fair enough. Councillor Alford.
Yes, good morning, Andrew, and everyone. And I'm just happy to be called Tony, so that's fine.
Fab. Councillor Barrow.
Morning, everybody. I'm quite happy to be known as Pete. It's very good to see a bit more informality. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Coombs.
Morning, Chairman. I'm quite happy to be called Tony, but obviously there are two Tonys on the committee now, so I'll leave that one with you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, fine. Okay.
Yeah. Been a councillor for a long time, represent Verwood, been involved in a whole variety of subject areas, but background is mainly children.
Councillor Holloway.
Good morning, everyone. Obviously, morning, Chair. First of all, congratulations on your new appointment, and I'm happy for you to call me Ryan, as I'm absolutely happy with the formality. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Jones. Still, are you there? Still, you're doing a great Darth Vader impression there.
Okay.
There you
Hear
go.
me now, can you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Stella, yes. And I'm a very long time councillor, and I'm interested in children and families.
Fab. Okay. What have I got next on my list? I've got Rebecca Knox. Councillor Knox, sorry.
Oh, no. From now on, Rebecca, please.
Fine. All right.
And of course, my agenda is very much the prevention agenda, health and wellbeing, and I'm delighted to see that there's some reports here that already reflect health in all policies. Fantastic. Welcome, Chairman.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Councillor Legg.
Hello. Always happy if you call me Robin.
Yeah, that's fine. Brilliant, Robin. Thanks. And Councillor Turner.
Yeah, Darryl Turner, represent Lyme Regis in the Charmouth ward. Been called many things over the years, but quite happy with Darryl.
Yeah, fab. And I tell you what, this is always the funny one, isn't it? Because I know we've got the officers in the room, and it's so which order would you like to do it in, officers? I know that we've got Jonathan Mayer, and Jonathan's put he doesn't want to be known as the Eagle, so we'll call him Jonathan. I know that we've also got Teresa and we've got Vivian as well here somewhere, and then we've got a few officers again for the agendas. If you're presenting an agenda, officers, if you could just introduce yourselves up, that would be fab. Okay, all right, let's crack on then. So Helen, apologies please.
We have no apologies, Chairman.
I know, it's a red letter day. It's good, isn't it? Everyone's turned up for the first meeting. It's brilliant. Can we have any declarations of interest?
Yes. Interest? Can I mention something, please? And yeah. in the light of further information, then perhaps you can call me Anthony, just to avoid confusion. But I do have to mention that in other times and in other places, I have been concerned and interested in the VCS. And reflecting that background, I think it would be appropriate for me not to speak or to vote in item number 4. Well,
Anthony, do you know, it's funny you mention that, because there's quite a few of us actually that have an interest in agenda item 4. So I took legal advice. So I know that quite a few of us are involved in the voluntary sector. And Jonathan gave us some wording. So for voluntary interests like these, it would help if you say, I am the chair of trustees. I've taken advice from the monitoring officer, and because this is a non-disclosable, not a disclosable financial interest, you're able to stay in the meeting, take part and vote. And that's what I'll be doing. And that would be the advice to other members. Jonathan, do you want to come in and just clarify that for me, please?
Chairman, so I think you've moved on to the item about declarations of interest.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
I know that very many councillors, you're all actively involved in your communities, you're actively involved in the voluntary and community sector. What the law requires you to declare are your disclosable pecuniary interests, that's your own financial interests. You're not required by law to disclose your membership or your involvement in voluntary organisations, clubs and societies that you support. And a membership or involvement like that does not prevent you from taking part this morning. I think Councillor Alford might be taking a slightly different view because of his particular involvement in the formulation of these proposals when he was the relevant portfolio holder.
So what's your view with Tony in terms of moving forwards?
Can I just interrupt there, because Jonathan has made absolutely the correct point in that I've been concerned and interested in the generality of the issue that you'll be debating this morning. So that's the reason why I perceive an interest to arise.
Fine, fabulous. Okay. All right. If there's no further declarations of interest, we'll continue on. Helen, public participation.
We have none, Chairman.
Okay. So we'll move on to agenda item 4. Okay, so financial provision to the voluntary and community sector. We have Jill here. Jill, would you like to introduce your item? And I believe we've got Laura Cornett as well.
Thank you very much.
And Jill, sorry, just quickly, would you like questions at the end? Can we just clarify that for members? So questions at the end, please.
Yeah, questions at the end would be good, but I would like to say, unfortunately, I have to leave by 11, so they might end up going to Laura if you're going to debate it for a length of time. Thank you very much. Jill Haynes, happy to be called Jill, and I have the portfolio for customer service and communities. And I'm very pleased to present this report, which is something that we have been working towards in the old days of Dorset County Council for quite some time. I'm glad to see that it's come forward because it's actually looking to change from a grant provision to a commissioning activity, the various areas that you have before you. And it's also looking to put this through for a 5-year term, because that does give confidence and continuity to those organisations we're working with. During COVID, we have had such a terrific response from our voluntary and community sector. Felt it really important to go forward without any changes or reductions in grant, because they are actually saving this council money. And I think that we then have your final item recommendation, which is number 5, is there are a load of other smaller organisations which we're then going to ask to bid, and in that bid we will be asking them to provide evidence of how the money has worked and what that has done in outcomes for people. So I'm happy to pass over to Laura now to present the report. She won't be taking very long about it, I'm sure, because really it's all about your questions at the end. So thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Laura, would you like to come in?
Absolutely, thank you very much. So I'll just give a very, very brief background, and if there's any questions towards the end as well, Paul Rutter, for the Service Manager for Leisure Services, will also be here to support me to answer any questions. Okay, so it's a very brief background. Dorset Council inherited a plethora of funding arrangements, including social arts, heritage and museums from the Sovereign Councils, which was honoured for an initial 12-month period. In November 2019, Cabinet authorised a consultation to take place on a proposed policy model to offer longer-term support to the voluntary sector, support service or infrastructure organisations to allow them to become strategic partners around our table, and then to offer a discretionary outcome-based fund to be introduced to replace all the other historical arrangements. All voluntary sector organisations across the Dorset Council area will have an opportunity to bid in against a set of criteria which we consulted on to ensure that all Dorset Council spend aligns to our corporate plans and priorities. To enable this to happen, a further 12-month rollover period of the historical arrangements was granted, which is due to end in March 2021. The consultation was open from January to March this year for a period of 8 weeks and received 1,619 responses, which is deemed a really good response. Overall, we received an overwhelming positive response to all of our policy proposals. However, since the consultation closed, as Jill has alluded to already, coronavirus has had a major effect on both positively and negatively on all areas of Dorset Council's voluntary sector. It's created financial instability to many organisations, but on the positive side, it's activated micro-level groups to stand up and support their communities. This proposed voluntary sector policy will enable Dorset's communities to build on and develop these new relationships and to support the early intervention and prevention agenda alluded to by Rebecca Knox. Jill's already mentioned the recommendations, so I won't go back over those. The only thing I wanted to, the only of the recommendations I wanted to really comment on was the recommendation number 4, because although the consultation response was incredibly supportive about a longer term provision for those museums and community buildings we currently support, more evidence has come to light, and we do feel these need to have further consideration within the property and assets review to ensure that we are able to support them in the right way and in line with all of our policies. Okay, so we are seeking support from the People and Health Overview Committee to support these proposed recommendations and to agree to proceed to Cabinet for financial decision in October. And I think regarding forward policy, if we reflect on Andrew's comments at the beginning, and not so much for Cabinet, but for the development of a cultural strategy and also a community strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Are there any questions, please? Daryl, you're straight in there. Councillor Turner. Sorry, Daryl.
It's a pleasure, Councillor Kirby, Andrew. One general query on basically all the recommendations, I think. Most of them talk about 6 months for a procurement exercise. I'd like to understand what a procurement exercise looks like and whether 6 months is adequate. Thanks.
Absolutely. So with any contracts that go over a set amount, we still have to comply with EU regulations. So all of these contracts as they stand would fall over that. Off the top of my head, it's about £175,000 total contract award. So these would all be greater than that. So we need to allow a 6-month timeline to enable the full process that we need to do within EU regulation to take place for a contract to be awarded. So obviously the fact we are now in end of September, and the paper would potentially go in October, that doesn't give us enough time, and also to be able to give notice onto those organisations currently delivering the grant agreements. So by allowing an extra 6 months from now, so that's a total of 9 months or about 10 months altogether to start a new contract, this would allow us sufficient time to give notice on our current arrangements and also to do a full procedure for EU procurement.
Thank you. That's fine. Thanks.
So I've got Rebecca next.
Thank you, Andrew. I think the question I have would come under what is currently in recommendation number 3. So I'm not going to name any organisations, but I just want some assurance, or maybe I won't get it, that say we have a small local group that currently is in receipt of funding and has been for some time. It was moved over from Dorset County Council to Dorset Council. Would that still get an extension from the 1st of April to the 30th of September? Or is that recommendation 3 purely for the arrangement we have currently with DCA and others? I suppose I'm just saying I personally know a group I would not give further funding to, and I wouldn't like to see it continue beyond the 1st of April.
Yes, certainly. So to answer your question, Rebecca, the 3 organisations that currently provide social voluntary sector infrastructure support are Dorset Community Action, Volunteer Centre Dorset and Dorset Race Equality Council. So those three in their current terms in this proposal would be rolled forward for a further 6 months. All their very specific grants would fall under number 5, so their funding would still be finished at the end of this financial year, and if Cabinet authorise the to go forward with this, then we would ensure a round of these grants would happen, which would enable them to bid into, as long as they can identify where they meet the Dorset Council priorities, to go live from April.
Andrew, might I just
yeah, you can come back on that, Rebecca. Yeah.
So those that come under 5, and thank you, Laura, that's really helps on number 3, but number 5, those will now be reassessed between now and the 1st of April, as according to the policy outlined here.
We have written to every single organisation that received the specific amounts, giving them notice that this financial year is their last financial year, and once a Cabinet decision has been made on the 6th of October, we will then write to them again to confirm that is still the case, and to tell them what the next steps will be if they want to apply for future funding.
And if they don't, the assumption is it ends?
Yes, it will end. So the current arrangements will definitely all end.
Thank you, that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. I've got Robin, you're next.
Thank you very much. As a new boy to this committee and to the process of giving support in some way or other to the voluntary sector.
Okay, Robin, we're on you. We're on you.
Okay. Well, some are newer than others. Where it says in paragraph 5 of the recommendation that you're looking for an outcome-based methodology, where are the outcomes that we're seeking set out, and to what detail are they set out? I mean, it may well be, as for all I know, already have been established, or is there a mechanism for setting them out and agreeing them at a later date? And particularly, obviously, at the present time with COVID, and we know not how long that's going to continue, whether the outcomes we've selected earlier are achievable.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Yes, so we did consult on the criteria which would form some of the outcomes as part of the full consultation that we did, the details of which are in the consultation report. Regarding the finalised details of the outcome-based review, it's slightly thematic in the fact that, because this is a very, very broad review that covers arts, culture, museums, as well as our social sector. So we have, as officers, we created a core set of criteria that all organisations would need to be able to offer outcomes against, and then there were strands thematically. So according if you're going for if you're an arts organisation, or whether you are social sector. In the main report, it does offer a very, very small amount of detail, saying that the final criteria and outcomes would be signed off by the portfolio holder. Obviously at the moment is Jill, so she would have the final say. We have within all the teams that will be administering these, we have specialised grants officers who are very used to seeking out the best outcomes from our organisations to ensure that they are appropriate for the level of funding. So if we are giving out a grant for example, £2,000, we would expect some reporting on that. However, if we're giving a grant for £30,000, the monitoring might be slightly more thorough. It will be slightly more thorough to ensure that obviously we are getting the best value and ensure we're obviously meeting our council priorities there. So at the moment, not all the decisions have been made, but the principles have. The final detail is currently being worked through with the officers and obviously with Jill's guidance.
Before we go to Peter, Jill, did you just want to come in there? I noticed you put an RTS.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes. Yeah, this is a different way of working, but one of the real advantages, I think, through this consultation that's done is it's something that those of you who were on Dorset County Council remember many years ago when I had my adult social care hat on. I was running something called Joining Up the Dots, which is where those were hundreds of little organisations that all had their own little office and their own little computer system, and they all needed money for the rent, and and they all were running a database which they were trying to collate, and none of them were really working together. I think it's so important now that what we've got is Dorset Community Action and the others actually working in collaboration. And this is the way of working, and this way of commissioning has actually prompted them to start to work much more collaboratively themselves. And that's really, really important that we allow them to flourish by talking to each other. We're not telling them how to do it, if that makes sense. And I think that looking at the discretionary and outcome-based funds as we go forward, that is still work in progress. I have actually only had this portfolio for about 3 weeks. I just need a bit more of a chance to look through all of that. And we did need to get the principle of this policy change, which is not providing grants, but actually looking to commission activity through scrutiny, because otherwise we were having a further delay on the time before we could actually go out to tender to get the work done. So I hope that sort of clarifies it a bit.
Thank you, Jill. I'm just going to go across to Peter now.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a point. I mean, as I expect many of us have, I've volunteered with national charities and some very local charities. And it's so I've got a very good understanding of how lean these organisations are and how difficult sometimes they can find it if they're going to be dealing with a bureaucracy of some sort. Just as a particular instance, I set up a small local charity in Southhill and was involved with when Dorset Council closed the youth clubs, and the youth clubs got transferred to community groups. And so our small little local charity went through that process, and I have to say we found it very difficult. So the question is regarding recommendation 5, if small local groups, especially the local micro groups which have popped up because of COVID and the response to COVID, if they come forward and ask for grants, will there be some sort of support arrangement within the council that can help them through the process and give them advice so they're not trying to do it all on their own? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, absolutely. We fully support that. So we have some officers at Dorset Council who are able to offer that expertise. But more importantly, we have Dorset Community Action, who are infrastructure organisation, and one of the things we support them to offer is information, advice and guidance to organisations to ensure their governments, their funding, everything is in place, and where appropriate to actually assist them to write bids and offer advice there, do an organisation health check to make sure they're working most efficiently, and if any funding bids they put in, they are as prepared and stand the best chance of getting it. So that has been provided for a very long time. They have a full Dorset Council area coverage, as we expect of all of our organisations that that provide infrastructure. On an arts and culture side, we also have, which is number 2, the arts currently provided by the Arts Development Company. So the arts is obviously quite slightly different to the social sector in the fact that they have less funding rounds, but usually for greater amounts for much longer periods of time, and the Arts Development Company are able to offer that exactly the same support as Dorset Community Action, but on much more of an art specific themes, so because they are experts in the arts and culture field. So yes, there's plenty of support to answer your question, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right then, let's move on. I'm going to go to Stella.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's very important that the council does support all these organisations, especially given the work that voluntary organisations have done during the COVID, and also arts and museums. In the Dorset plan originally, there was no mention of arts and museums, and hopefully that has been put back in, because otherwise how are they going to have their criteria based on the Dorset plan? That's my first question. Secondly, you say that the new contracts will begin in October 2021, and yet at 9.5 you say the first allocations will be the 1st of April 2021. So how does that work out? And the third question is, you're going to leave museums until you've done the asset review. But when is the asset review likely to be finished?
Thank you very much, Stella. So to answer your first question, yes, I can confirm that arts and culture are in the main Dorset plan that was put in as a result of the consultation that happened at the end of last year. Regarding the new contracts, so originally everything was supposed to start from the 1st of April 2021. However, because COVID has delayed this paper coming to Cabinet for decision, we are asking for a further 6 months on recommendations 1, 2, and 3 to allow for the EU procurement process to take place. However, we don't feel that it would be in the public's interest to delay number 5 or 4 recommendations 4 and 5 because at the moment, particularly around number 5, depending which sovereign council you came from, depended how you were funded. So at the moment, there's inequality in opportunity, and we want to equal that up as soon as possible. So if the paper goes through in the October Cabinet, there is still plenty of time to get that process started and up and running to enable those organisations, and particularly the micro organisations, to be able to bid in for funding to start from April. The other 3, they would have their grants extended as is for a further 6 months, so that there isn't a gap in provision. And whilst we undertake the procurement exercise. And regarding the asset review, that's not my area of expertise, so I will pass this back to the chair for somebody else potentially more appropriate to answer that question, please.
Who fancies asking this one?
I'll try another go if you want.
Yeah, go for it, Joe.
So this comes under Tony Ferrari's portfolio. It is a huge piece of work, and it needs to be done carefully, but as quickly as possible. So I imagine that this will be taking at least a year for the asset review to be complete.
Thank you, Jill. I've also got Spencer. I've also got the leader. I think he's put an RTS. So Spencer, would you like to come in as well if you'd like to answer that one?
Thank you very much, Andrew. Just a quick point on the asset review. I had a conversation with Tony Ferrari on Sunday. It's an 80-page document. It's not quite complete yet. It was due to come initially to Cabinet on the 6th of October because I want it to be as complete as we can make it before it gets into giving everybody a chance to have a look at it. We've deferred it to the 22nd of November Cabinet meeting when, as I say, it's an 80-page document. Of course, it's got to be comprehensive, Andrew, and I wanted to make sure that it's as complete and as accurate as we can make it before we put it before the Cabinet. But and then, of course, it'll go into the rightfully go into the right processes, so it can be looked, but so everybody can get a good understanding about what it looks like. I hope you found that helpful.
Yeah, fab, Chair. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, except again, we've got no dates of when the museums will be getting their funding. And can I just make one comment on what you go
for it, Stella.
Yeah, item 4 and 5, you say little organisations can start getting their funding early. How are we then assured that all the money won't be spent on the little organisations before the big ones are allowed to apply?
They all apply in together. Obviously, the actual process is still being under development, Stella, but potentially we are currently discussing there being different levels of funding. So organisations will be able to apply into, for example, over £10,000, up to £10,000, and then under £1,000, and then each of them will potentially have a slightly different process, obviously making it slightly leaner for those organisations that are applying for smaller amounts, but obviously ensuring there's still an audit trail, because that criteria is still being and process is still being developed. That's something that's we can update on at a later date. But the point of today is very much about the policy for the process, and then the details will be put into place, obviously following a cabinet decision as to whether this will go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline, Vice Chair.
Thank you. I want to comment on number 3, and first thing I need to say is that I'm a board member of Dorset Community Action and also Dorset Race Equality Council, although that's not a financial interest. and therefore I can take part in the meeting and vote. I have a concern about that, because the arrangement, I can see the advantages, but also the power it puts in the hands of the 3 bodies who are working to hold that one contract. I understand that's Dorset Voluntary Centre, Dorset Community Action, and the Citizens Advice across Dorset. They are in a far powerful position there, and that could be at the disadvantage of smaller charities. And there have already been issues and problems over time with people working in a sense in the same area, not easily handing on work, so, and the finance that goes with it. So I have an anxiety about that, and I just wonder how we ensure that the power that is given to those 3 bodies by taking on that contract is not accidentally, I'm sure, misused.
Absolutely, Pauline. So just to correct you slightly there, number 3, the 3 infrastructure organisations are Dorset Community Action, Dorset Race Equality Council and Volunteer Centre Dorset. Regarding citizens' advice, that's covered in information, advice and guidance under number 1. But the principle of the question still remains. So their purpose will be to provide infrastructure support to the rest of the sector, not to be service delivery. So they will support the sector and support people in need. However, where there's areas of expertise, we would expect them to work in partnership, and that will be written into any contract that we do tender for, because the whole point is that they are the strategic link between Dorset Council and the full sector. So they are the sector's voice towards us, so the communication comes up as well as the communication comes down. Dorset Council has aspiration to be a community-led council, as reflected in the corporate plan, and so we need a mechanism to be able to do that. And what's currently provided by these 3 organisations and what will be provided by that contract, obviously because it will be tendered, so there's no guarantee it will be those specific organisations, that there will be the expectation that they will be that strategic partner for Dorset Council and that ear and support for the whole of the sector. So it does amend that relationship slightly, and I think Jill might want to come in here as well.
Yeah, Jill, do you want to pop in briefly?
Only that I put it in the chat bar actually. It's exactly right. We have so many, and we discovered these great organisations during COVID and the way that they work. We don't need to tell them how to do the job. We need to allow them and help facilitate them do that job. So it shouldn't be top down. It should be that we provide the wherewithal for that to happen within their partner organisations, and that they get on and do what is usually a much better job with a lot less resource than the way that it has been done historically in the past. So it's really important that we actually are starting to work with the communities in this way, in the same way that we are trying to start to work with our towns and parishes in a similar way.
Fabulous. Now I'm going to be really selfish, and I'm going to jump in now, because I'm quite aware that we are a policy making committee, and I'm really keen that we try and get away from scrutiny. There's obviously some really good questions coming through, but what I'm picking up on at the moment is actually, what can we implement in terms of policy? So we've touched on it. There we go, Jill. What about sector engagement to be written into all our policies? Would that be a useful reflection, Laura? And then I'll go back to the meeting.
Yes, I absolutely think it would. Obviously, I've got some senior officers here as well. I do think both Teresa and Vivian would support. I know they're both incredibly community minded in supporting the sector to help us deliver our outcomes. And so, yes, quite frankly, I think we should look in the future to embedding the voluntary sector as our key partners, when it comes to a policy.
Fab. Is everyone else in agreement with that one then? If you just stick yes in the bar or something like that, and there we go. We've got an outcome already. There we go. We've got one outcome and one policy we can stick in. There we go. Where are we up to? I've forgotten where are we? Rebecca, it's your RTS now. Go for it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry, Andrew. I think we might have covered it, but there was a tripartite agreement so that the council could deal with three together, which was actually citizen advice, the Dorset Community Volunteer Centre, and Dorset Community Action. And which obviously they're potentially, we don't know the outcome of the contract and the commissioning, but potentially currently under number 1 and 3. Pete mentioned the link between number 5, i.e. the micro sector charities, and 3. And I really just wanted to get some absolute clarity here that 5, the allocation of grant money under 5 is a Dorset Council decision, and if they are successful, then they have the ability to be guided and get the support from our commissioned arrangements under number 3. But it won't be for number 3 to decide the grant allocating for those in number 5. So it is ultimately the Dorset Council who will be doing that. And then they can have access to 3 if they need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Currently, with the fund that I oversee, the Dorset Community Impact Fund, we do have a representative from Dorset Community Action around the table. So as part of the decision maker, as part of a wider panel. Now that has worked incredibly well because obviously they bring a slightly different opinion and view, and also they know the organisations. They also have to declare interest if they have worked directly with the organisation who is applying in. That is something I had in my mind as potentially coming forward as an option, and then the Arts Development Company potentially for the kind of arts and culture sector as well. But it was the panel, the decision makers would be made up from councillors, officers from Dorset Council, and then potentially one representative from the sector. I think if we are asking them to be strategic partners, we need to have them round the table, but not having sole control of those decisions. So it would be a joined up way of working. But once again, that hasn't been fully decided yet, and I think that's something that we are working on behind the scenes, and to which Jill is involved in. But I really take your point about the fact that they wouldn't have the full control, but they would be the number 3 organisations, and number 2 as well for the arts and culture organisations would be supporting those organisations we are funding under number 5.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Laura Miller, feel free to speak, but come on people, I want more policies. I want more.
Thank you, Andrew. I know I'm not a member of the committee, but I just wanted to jump in and say that I'm loving this debate because, of course, this is what we've all been doing for the last couple of months, and this is absolutely where we want to get to. I like the language being used, that kind of, growing policy, shaping it together, not doing 2. I think that's so important because we found that, haven't we, Laura, through the work that we did during COVID. We don't need to do 2. These guys do it themselves. We just need to listen and learn. But I just wanted to make the point that language is important, and we should be growing policy together with our community and voluntary sector, and also looking at the opportunities that we've got for commissioning within the community and really building that community resilience, because things like museums, things like arts organisations, they're part of social care too. They offer opportunities for people and they can be really, really influential. So I just really wanted to sort of add my support and just say how pleased I am that this is being looked at in such a positive way by Overview, and thank you.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Teresa, would you like to come in, because you've been making some good points in the sidebar?
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so really just to support this as an approach, as Laura Miller has just said, we've been working extensively with the voluntary sector and others during this time, and I think that it's a mantra for myself and Vivian in terms of working with, not doing 2 or 4. But I think that we must also remember we're also working with our health colleagues, and so our opportunity and our ambition in influencing where and how funding is allocated and driven in, both in terms of supporting tenders and bids, I think needs to be really thoroughly joined up through this policy making committee. I'm really struck by some of the deep dive work we've been doing to understand where and how we're funding people. It's not always landed in the places where we might expect it to in terms of areas of greatest deprivation or need. So I think my real challenge to us is, can we be confident that all of those anchor organisations, all of those place shaping, big hitting parts of the business, of that system leadership, health, ourselves, schools, everybody else, are being coordinated through this body, because I think that's where we'll have real impact.
Do you know what? I've got some really good stuff going on in the sidebar. I think if you want to write it in the sidebar, that's brilliant. But I will ask you to speak. Vivian, you're coming up with some good ideas. Do you want to sort of sew up some of Teresa's as well? Because I think it's regarding partnership working. And then, so if I have Vivian and then I have Rebecca, then followed by Jill. Vivian, sorry to put you on the spot. I'm sure you don't mind. Vivian, are you there? Vivian, I think your internet over in Devon isn't particularly good. I tell you what, should I go on to Rebecca? Rebecca, are you happy to come in?
Yes, sure. It'll be no surprise that I've maybe jumped ahead of probably how far this committee was going to get in such a short period of time. But we're actually talking about something which is social prescribing, and if it would be possible to embed the requirement for some of the criteria judging in some of our commissioning, that actually the outcomes of whatever an organisation is going to deliver will fit in with social prescribing, i.e. that is for the likes of our professional social care workers, those in mental health, those GPs, across the health sector. So following up what Vivian was trying to say in the sidebar, maybe we could have that as part of the criteria, which Laura was talking about earlier. But if social prescribing and the natural prescription could be part of that, I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. Can we somehow flesh this out a little bit? I would love to see something to do with social prescribing in there as well. It fits in nicely with the prevention at scale agenda. Vivian, is your internet working? No, I don't think she is. Jill, I'll come back to you then. Jill Haynes.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Of course, this isn't just about one little bit, although when we do a policy or a paper, it always seems to be taken as in a silo. But as we move forward with our integrated care system, as we move forward with the way that we work as a whole system with Dorset Council, with our health colleagues, with the towns and parishes, it becomes increasingly difficult to write everything into every paper. But it is exactly the way forward that Laura has been talking about, and as have the officers. It is so important that we start to see this as a holistic way of moving and a way of working with the people that we try to help in Dorset. Yes, it's social prescribing, but it's also about getting our health colleagues to join in with this and getting them to be part of it too, because they have funding which they fund into these organisations, but it's separate from ours. So it's a step. It's never something that we're going to be able to fix right straight away at the very first meeting of an overview committee. But I think it's great, the steer that you're giving Laura and myself moving forward, that this is the way that we should be working. And I'm very happy to say I will definitely be taking that on board.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to go to Pete, if I may, and then we're going to revisit that, if this is okay with members. Pete, have you got something to say, Peter?
Yes, just very briefly. I mean, I set up and run the Southall Assistance Scheme to help with deliveries from COVID, and to take Jill's point, we did 250 deliveries. and it didn't cost a penny. It was completely free. And the social prescribing thing's really interesting, because I'd really like it if, with the loneliness agenda, people feeling isolated, if we'd be quite happy for GPs and other health professionals to refer people to us so they could get involved with the group, because we want to grow the group. We want to turn it into something for the future as well. So we don't want to, just because COVID doesn't appear to be having a resurgence, but eventually it will end. And we don't want the group to die then. We want it to be active. So I'd be happy for it to be seen as some sort of trial or experiment, and perhaps write some policy around it, because the thing that frightens me to death is the minute we try and do this, it'll be the risk assessments and the insurance and the registered charity process to go through, etc., etc. So it's quite a step. So
Peter, I'm in quite a good position to be able to sort of answer some of your questions there. I know that CCG and other areas, the locality health groups, have done quite a lot of work on this, especially I'm going to blow my own trumpet here, especially in North Dorset. So I think it's a bit of an open door. I like it. I think where we're going now is how do we? I want something tangible. I want a policy now to say, how are we going to work with health? Okay, we're not, as Jill says, we're not going to solve it instantly, but how do we put into words how we're going to work with our health colleagues? Have we got another RTS, or are we good? It's a shame that Vivian keeps on dropping out. It's always the way, isn't it? The one director you need. Can I throw that back to Teresa? Teresa, you've got brilliant ideas. How would you flesh that out?
Well, I've certainly got a very similar framework to Vivian about how we work across people services. So whilst she's attempting to get her Wi-Fi on, I think I can reasonably speak well for children and adults on this. I think what's really already underway, so just to reassure colleagues, is in really substantial and really helpful senior leadership conversations across the health economy. So lots of joint meetings going on with colleagues in the acute and in the integrated care system, looking at how we can be anchor organisations, how we can place shape together. And by that means how we can make sure that we divert and direct our funding and our resources to people at the earliest possible level. So both that prevention at scale, but also early intervention and doing much more community-led work. So that's underway, that's for sure. What matters most is that we, however, don't just become huge integrated organisations who then do to our communities. So lots of the work that's going on, for example, around the Weymouth and Portland piece is around beginning to think about how do we engage with community now to have them work with us to tell us what those communities need. So it's around making sure that we as senior execs from various partnership bodies are joined up enough that when we've got our kind of our arms really well linked, we can go and be the best listening people to the communities, and that work's underway already, but more to do. I think we might have Vivian now.
I think we have Vivian. Are you there now?
Yeah, briefly, let's have a go. Apologies for my Wi-Fi. I've only just heard the latter part of what Teresa was saying, but in terms of our relationship with our partners in health, absolutely, you know, I think we are working across the ICS, so the integrated care system, to come from the same position about building with our communities and making sure we've got the right care and support in the right places. So I think that's a really strong message that's coming out from our health partners as well. So I really think it's important that we do that jointly with them. And I think Rebecca mentioned how we're working with our public health colleagues, you know, so those, how we make changes and policy decisions, it's really key that we do that jointly together, because there's a real appetite for that. Sorry, Andrea, I dropped out earlier. I missed that initial bit of conversation that I was really keen to take part in.
That's right. I think we can touch base afterwards, can't we? I've got Laura Miller, and then I've got Laura Cornett.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, just wanted to drop in and back up what Teresa and Vivian have said. It, for me, a large part of the conversation, and unsurprisingly, I'm not going to pinpoint on actual policy, but I'm going to say that actually across the integrated care system, one of the most difficult conversations has been getting all partners involved to actually forego sovereignty on some of the good things and the wins that come out of it. And that conversation has really started to change, I think, since the start of COVID. Previously you might have people saying, well, actually, that was our win. We worked on discharges from hospital and we got the numbers down. And now you might say, well, actually, the system got the numbers down because it might be that we put occupational therapists into hospital discharge lounges. And so people are much more willing to share the credit and attribute the credit for doing things to the integrated care system as a whole, not just for individual agencies. And I think that actually sounds like quite a small thing, but I think it's indicative of the actual move to that whole system change, which I fully support. So yeah, thank you.
Fab. Thank you, Laura. Laura Cornett.
Thank you, Andrew. I think the way I'm taking the conversation and how everyone is so, really keen to get involved and make sure this is a whole system approach. I think it goes back to my very initial comments about, when we're looking at forward policy, it is about the development and of, between our partners, our other statutory sector partners, and also everybody internally as well, the development of both a community strategy and our cultural strategy, I think would support pretty much everything that we are kind of talking about here at the moment. So, I know, Andrew, you're very keen to get some policy, put in today, but I think perhaps the kind of authorization or go ahead to develop these are two really big pieces of work, but I think are really quite central to everything that we've been talking about today. Obviously the funding is one element, but actually how we work with the sector. And I was involved last year with a number of my team and of the previous portfolio holder, Councillor Anthony Alford, in developing the concordat to how we work with the town and parishes, and that work is developing. And I think that both the communities and the cultural strategy would work on a similar lines, or the development of, to go, going forward and developing this, and would be kind of almost form the infrastructure of all the other policy we want to make around it. I don't know if you're in agreement there.
Yeah, I am in agreement. I think that yeah, okay, I've been pushing policy, but actually, part of this is about giving a very clear steer, and I think as a group we've given a very clear steer in terms of what we'd like. So I'm quite aware of time. If there are no further questions, I'm going to go to the recommendations, if that's all right with everyone. I think we've got more than enough here to be able to push forwards. Is everyone happy? Excellent. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you. So I've just got to scroll. So it was quite difficult doing it on a laptop. I much prefer physical meetings. Okay. You happy if I take it on block?
Yes.
Anyone
agreed.
says yeah, agreed. If anyone's unhappy with taking it on block, just say no. So the recommendations are, oh gosh, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'm going to have to read 5. Sorry, you're going to have to read them out. So the continued provision of the information, advice and guidance service for residents at the current financial rate for a 5-year term to offer stability, extension of the current grant for a further 6 months, 1st of April to 30th September 2021, to enable procurement exercise to be undertaken, the new contract to begin on the 1st of October 2021. The continued provision of arts and culture support service at the financial rate for a 5-year term, extension of the current grant for a further 6 months, 1st of April to 30th September 2021, to enable a procurement exercise to be undertaken. The new contract to begin on the 1st of October 2021. God. The continued provision of support services to the social voluntary community sector at the current financial rate for a 5-year term. This will be tendered as a one contract for bidding organisations to work in partnership to deliver the support for the rest of the social voluntary community sector, extension of the current grant recipients for a further 6 months, 1st of April to 30th September 2021, to enable procurement exercise to be undertaken. The new contract to begin on the 1st of October. Yes, I know you can read, Daryl. The continued commission support of museums, community centres in which Dorset Council have a revisionary interest at the current financial rate for a period of 1 year from the 1st of April 2021 to be considered within the wider council buildings and assets review. And 5, a discretionary outcome-based fund to be introduced to replace all historical grant programmes offered by Dorset Council, criteria to be modified in accordance to comments made in the consultation and agreed with the Cabinet portfolio holder. I just want to do it properly for the first time. All right, can I have a proposal for that, please?
So proposed, Chairman.
Yeah, fab. Is anyone dissenting? I learned that word from Daryl yesterday.
Then I'll second it, Andrew, before that.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, fab. Okay, all right, then I think that's all agreed. Thank you very much.
Thank
Fabulous. All right, and thank you, Laura. I know that a lot of work's gone into that.
It's a big team and very much involved the sector as well. Thank you.
You're very modest. Yeah. So my regards to Paula Bennett and the rest of the voluntary sector.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay, we'll crack on. We'll crack on with the rest of the agenda. Hold on. Yeah, and thank you, Laura. Yeah, so I'm going to take agenda items 5 and 6 together, as I believe that they are sort of intrinsically linked. I mentioned earlier that I believe strongly that formalised meetings are not always the most favourable breeding ground for policy development, although formal meetings have their place and are required. I think what the coronavirus pandemic has really shown us is that there are new ways of working, and we should start to embrace those new ways of working. I'm for instance quite keen on exploring how we can best use technology to collaborate and develop ideas and to continue to formulate policy. My view, and you know, I'm going to be opening this up, is that we also have more of a push to informal workshops that will complement the formal meetings. And I'm going to be a little bit braver here as well, and say that although obviously papers and reports are really important to come to the committee, I don't want to be inundated with reports. And you know, to an extent, if a report is already written and the recommendations are set out, then there is obviously a scope for policy, but it's not quite so embryotic. And I believe firmly that we should be involved as a committee at the embryonic stage of creating policy. So to that end, I'm aware that we have a forward plan, but I believe it also needs a bit of amending, depending on how we'd like to sort of formulate ourselves moving forwards. I've got Deb Smart. Deb Smart's joined us. I think I asked her to join, and I can't see her in the bar. And we've also got Jonathan Mayer as well from a legal standpoint. But I think really what I'm looking for now is a steer from you as members in terms of it's our committee. How do you want to see it work? And I'll throw it open to you all. Come on, it's like tumbleweeds. Go on, who wants to speak first?
Go on then, Andrew. We kick it off.
Yeah, Daryl.
We've already obviously decided as chairs to meet informally, and listening to this morning's conversation, I think maybe we ought to expand that and include Rebecca onto that chairs group. Should be useful for actually tying all this together. Massive topics we've been talking about this morning and huge amounts of work. My only real worry is that if we take on huge amounts of work, then we'll get little bits of it done. And that's been the problem with overviewing scrutiny for many years. You can't really dig into the issues and solve the problems by taking on these massive games. So we need to actually chop this down to little manageable parts, make those work, and then join it all together. And that takes a bit of time. I'm more than happy to work in, whether we have inquiry days, whether we have working groups. I think working groups will probably be the best way forward, because they can actually attach themselves to these little bits of work, solve the problem, bring them back to the committee, and make that probably more efficient in doing that way. So that's a starter for 5.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Daryl. I think Rebecca is going to be quite useful. I think it's going to be a two-way thing. I think as chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I'm sure that she'll stick stuff back to us. More than likely. Tony, you want to comment? As in Tony Coombs, Tony C.
Thank you, Andrew. Just picking up the bit about the working parties, I'm looking at our forward plan, and for example, we've got the draft housing allocations policy coming up. I've been on the working group for that. So I suppose my question to you is, if we have a working group as a subcommittee that does all the work, are we going to bring it back through our committee, or are we going to send it straight on to cabinet, because we could be putting in an extra layer of bureaucracy, maybe, or do you think that something requires extra scrutiny once the working group has made their findings?
That's a really good point. I think what could happen is that the findings are brought to the meeting. I mean, I think that where I think the beauty of that is that where I'm looking at things like more of an online presence and things like Teams, is that working group could put their say their findings into our Teams group, and then we can look at it there and we can view and we can comment, and then it could just be very quickly signed off at the formal meeting. I'm unsure. Jonathan, do you want to come in and comment on that? I don't know quite where the legal's gone, but I tell you what. So if I go, whilst I'm waiting for Jonathan, Pauline, do you want to speak?
Thank you. Yes, I think the working through working groups, etc., is brilliant. It moves us forward. But what concerns me is we've had considerable criticism as Dorset Council, particularly during our use of virtual meetings, about how we do or do not involve the public, how we respond democratically. And the more we do in working groups, the more we do effectively behind the scenes, the more difficult it is to involve the public. I know as councillors that's an important part of our job, working around our patch, but that's only part of the process. So I think beware, formal committee meetings have an importance because they give a formal right to be involved to members of the public who wish to come in and have questions or statements. So it's balance between getting on with the job and actually ensuring that we are seen to be involving, offering an opportunity to the public to be democratically involved.
Yeah, thank you. That's a useful point. Rebecca.
Yeah, sorry. Right. Okay, a couple of things. Thank you for the suggestion that as chairman of the Health and Wellbeing Board for Dorset that I might be included in your meetings. That's entirely up to you. If you then agree that that's okay between the rest of you, I'd be delighted to. I'm totally in favour of working virtually, and in fact one can attend far more things now, which is so much more helpful. So yesterday I'm sure many of us watched Daryl's People and Place overview, which was really helpful because there are so many crossovers. And just looking at the forward plan, I'm trying to understand where the areas are going to be, because looking at the forward plan as it is, the meeting in November has got a housing paper. Now I understand that's policy. Housing is also place. So I think the chairs of these meetings really need to have a holistic view and decide where these things are going, because I wouldn't necessarily, I know it's about health, absolutely where you live is fundamentally about health, but it's also about place. And I would therefore like to see maybe an opportunity to have another look at the forward plan for November even, because it's policy, as Tony has mentioned, it's been made somewhere. Should we free up that? It was somewhere pre us and it goes straight to cabinet, because I can actually see that it's already on the cabinet agenda for November. How realistic would it be for us to comment and then it go on to the cabinet so quickly? So just teasing out some of this process which might not actually follow the work and the actions that we need to complete.
Yeah, I agree. Stella.
Yeah, I was going to talk along the lines of Rebecca. Where do all these papers that go to cabinet, where are they formulated? Which committee looks at them? And I think that's the first thing we should be looking at. If you look at the forward plan for the cabinet, there are several things there that obviously somebody has written, and they should be coming to this committee. and I agree with Pauline, the committees should be open. We can have working parties, but as long as decisions are made in open committees, I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, okay, fine. Anthony.
Thank you, Andrew. I think some of these recent contributions are working in the direction that I'm thinking of, and I sort of see two elements to this, one of which is a quality control element, so we can talk about a forward plan, papers going up to cabinet, and that those with the health of people that relate to health and people, they can usefully have the quality control check through us, so that the cabinet, when they receive the paper, will know that that's been considered very carefully. On the other hand, we have the policy development aspect, which is, I suppose, where most of us will find things to be potentially very, very interesting, where we can work in working groups to develop policy or policy direction that we can ask officers to work up. So that would help to help us to make progress and be making policy that is going to work for this council.
Okay, fab. So taking your points on, everyone's points on, how do we embrace the digital side of this? I think what my steer would be to members is how are we going to work together online and collaborate, because I think that's going to be really powerful moving forwards. I've got Deb Smart somewhere. Debs, are you here?
I don't think she is, Chairman.
She's not here. That's a pain. So Daryl in the chat bars explained that one of there will be, and I've spoken to Daryl about this, is where there's going to be that degree of crossover, and I think what would be really key is where there is crossover for us to have perhaps a joint committee. Or an informal or a joint workshop where we can explore things like that. And I think a good example of that would be the COVID reset and recovery that will be coming through. It's obviously a large amount of work, but it covers both areas. And Rebecca obviously spoke about housing and very much so with the prevention at scale agenda, and how our housing is placed, but yet it influences our housing, very much influences our health. So I think where we'll go with this is if Daryl and I have a bit of a get together, I don't think there's anything wrong with a bit of crossover, and I think that will naturally happen. I think as long as we don't deep dive into one another's committees, I think that we should be okay. He says, looking at Daryl.
If I could come in there, Andrew, yeah, totally agree with that. I think we also need to look closely at the two scrutiny committees, because again there will be crossover. I've already spoken to Shane Bartlett, and we feel that when you're looking at a policy, there may be some areas of that policy that require scrutiny prior to it coming to overview for completion of that policy. So this is the opening gambit of a very complicated game, and I'm sure we will get there, but it will take a bit of work on the way. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. It's not particularly straightforward. I think there will be a bit of teething pain, but yeah, Peter.
Just a short comment. I mean, some of us are very new to this committee because, well, like you made the point, we're all new to the committee, but some of us are very new to the council as well. And there are some things which are and so the issue, we've talked a lot about process, where decisions are made and how things go through the process. What we haven't really said is where do the actual issues come from? What are the main? Where are the problem areas? Where's the link to the risk assessment, the central risk register? So, what the suggestion from me is, would it be helpful to think about some sort of seminar for the committee, so we get a briefing from officers across the piece, and they can actually outline to us the broad areas that we should be interested in and where the problems are, and then perhaps from that can come some sort of work program that picks up some of the issues, and especially the issue that Daryl raised about we can't just eat the whole elephant, we've got to chop it into bits and eat little parts of it. So that's just my thoughts.
Pete, you actually you actually really highlighted something that Teresa and I and Vivian spoke about earlier. Teresa, are you happy to come in?
Yes, thank you, Andrew, and really helpful, Pete. I think what the conversation we were having both with the scrutiny panel and with Andrew this morning is about. I see the real opportunity here to be one of enhanced ambition. So we know that we've got a whole raft of work programmes, as people have already been discussing today, around community and place development, and certainly the Children and Young People's Plan and some of the adults transformation. But there's an opportunity here for us to really say, what's our big ambition around policy across the whole board and across the piece here, and how do we bring those forward as a work plan, as you say? And some of that will be well fed and well structured from what's not working well at the moment, as well as what is working well. So we all obsessed with that strengths-based language in the council now around what's working well, what are we worried about, and what we're doing about it. And I guess those sorts of structural conversations are really helpful for us to have that happening. So what's working well is that we know we're moving ever forward with our voluntary sector body, and we're moving ever forward with our partner bodies. However, what we're worried about is, will that land the way in which our communities need that to land? Have we got the capacity to move at pace into those kind of micro community issues, so to support people doing more for themselves? That's what we're worried about, isn't it? Because if that doesn't happen, we'll have that graph of doom, of demand. And we also have really big ticket items around marketplace. And I saw that Laura earlier mentioned in the chat line some issues around how do we market shape. It's really critical for us as a strategic partnership that we have better market provision for when people do need that help from us, and it needs to be at a higher level. So I think we could begin quite quickly to work out where the areas we need to work on, and that's partly because some things will simply be strengthening, but other things where we have some real issues that we need to work on.
Okay, I'm going to go to Anthony, and then I'm going to go to Stella.
Yes, I just want to come back to the issue about crossover. I do feel as though it's highly desirable to minimise it to the best extent that we can. Otherwise, it will just overwhelm us. And I think we just have to have a principle which says pre-decision it's overview, post-decision it's scrutiny. Something that will work in an effective way, just to try and avoid the confusion about who's doing what.
Yeah, I would agree. I think my one concern about this committee is that it loses its focus and becomes a scrutiny committee. So Anthony, well picked up on. Daryl said I don't agree. I love that. So I'm going to Stella, then I'll come back to Daryl.
Yeah, I think something you just said there, the focus of the committee. The focus of the committee, we are people and health, and yet no one today has mentioned children, young people or families. And that should be at the forefront of all our discussion, all our policies. And I think that's something we should put that right at the front of our agenda every time.
Okay, I'm going to go to Daryl, and then I'm going to go to Vivian. Daryl, do you want to come in? It's nice.
Yeah, I didn't intend to.
Sorry, if you're right in the bar, I'm going to pick you up.
On what type of topic would you like me to come into?
Well, just about you didn't agree.
Oh no, I think there will be crossover. It's only natural when we look at very complicated policies and processes. I think there will be a scrutiny function to look at some of these issues as part of the policies prior to us looking at the whole policy as an overview committee. I think it's natural, I think it's right, and I think we should be doing it. Thanks.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to go Vivian, and then I'm going to go Rebecca.
Thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to add to that, really, about your comment earlier about we want to look at how to launch this committee to have an influence. So it's got to be about so what different making, and you'd want that to be very much linked to our ambition and our focus on, has what we've done made it, and that's a slightly different take to where scrutiny are going, but the policy needs to be supportive of the outcome and our ambition. So it's just in support of that, really, about let's focus on our outcomes and hold ourselves to account over making a real difference for our residents.
Okay, and then Councillor Knox, sorry, Rebecca, and then Jonathan.
Hi, thank you. I think Vivian's just touched on what I was going to mention, but it just, I'm trying to answer Stella's question about, well, suggesting this is all about families and people and children. Exactly. It's about the healthy outcomes for our residents, which absolutely include that families and children, and in fact children are, we start at that very, very early age of prevention. But so it's about the policy that affects their health and their living environment, and the healthy outcome for our residents, whether that's safety, health, the environment, place, it all matters. So I just wanted to say it is about that, and it's not, can I just say what it's not? It's not about the operational matters affecting the NHS. I think we've got to be really, really clear that we are not getting into how many X-ray machines there might be in the community hospitals. This is about healthy outcomes, working with the CCG, but we are not here to be the governance arrangements for outcomes of the CCG.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Rebecca. I think I'd get a slap from my partner if I started deep delving into district nursing. Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I just wanted to come back to then how you start practically, I think, to develop your forward work programme. So your terms of reference really helpfully talk about the committee developing its own work programme at its own initiative and developing policy as well at the request of the cabinet. So you will get specific requests from the cabinet to help them in developing policy in certain areas. But you do have the ability then to say, right, at our own initiative, we're setting our agenda as whatever. And I just wanted to go back to what Councillor Pete Barrow was saying about perhaps using the risk register, perhaps using Mark Eyre to help you with that work, and perhaps a focus seminar where you identify what is it, what are these areas that you wish to concentrate upon as a committee, because at the moment it feels as if you're sort of talking around what those areas might be, and you need a more focused session to do that.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Jonathan. I'm just going to go to Daryl, and then we'll start sort of formulating a plan. Daryl.
Yeah, very quickly, just to respond to Jonathan. We've already contacted Mark Ayres and his merry men. If you remember, on the scrutiny committee, we used to have a compliments and complaints session. We've asked him to expand that with basically the old QPRs, the quality performance reports. So we can obviously delve into the issues that concern the public from that base and choose some of those items for the work programme. So that's already in hand. Thanks.
Yeah, fab. Okay. And I'm going to go back to Anthony.
Yes, just to say that mention of the risk register, I feel the dull thud of bureaucracy.
Do you know what? There we go. I love the fact that none of us really agreeing on this, which is nice and healthy. Okay, in terms of moving forwards, I think there is, as Jonathan mentions, that we need to actually formulate something and have a session. Now, I've really been pushing for work online, and I think we can have as members. Okay, we can have our Teams group formed, and this is something that we could formulate in our Teams group and to be taken to our next formal meeting. So we can come together with our ideas. We can work through go through a mini seminar, and actually it's a really good example of how we can do it online and then bring it to our next formal meeting. Are members happy with that? Are members happy working online? I can see Rebecca's happy with that. Yeah, Peter's. Yeah, Anthony's with it. I understand that it's not the norm, but I think it's the way forwards. And then obviously with it being agreed in a formalised meeting, so we have the accountability in the formalised meeting, so we can show our work. I think that'd be a good example of how to do it. Are people feeling a bit more confident about that? Yeah, brill. Okay, all right. Well, I'm a bit happier now. I've got a bit of a steer in terms of where we want this to go. Laura, I've got Laura Miller on. Laura Miller, are you wanting to speak? No. Okay, fine. All right then. Okay. Well, then let's bring that to a close then. Helen, what have we got next? So if the outcome is basically that we work on creating a new forward plan online, then that would be fab. Are members happy with that? Just write in the sidebar. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, all right, let's crack on. Brilliant. We can show how good we are at joint working, and we've got the input from Hayley Caves as well. If anyone wants any additional training, but we've all been using Teams, and I think that Teams is the way forwards in terms of. Yeah, Daryl, you want to put something? Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, yeah, it's just the fact that we've obviously got we've taken over existing work plans from the old committees. We need to go through those first to understand who's been allocated what from those to form a basis of our own plans moving forward before we probably have member input to that.
So where I'm thinking is that we start a bit of a blank sheet, so we actually throw out the forward work plan. And then we repopulate.
I think you still got to take note of what's there, because there are topics in need of some form of overview, scrutiny, whatever. So, like I said, I think the first thing to do, perhaps for the informal chairs meeting, as I said before, is we go through that list and allocate them to the different one of the 4 committees, and then go to Teams to work through that list, as well as add additional stuff.
You see, I think that for me, it would be a case of taking it onto Teams and bringing the rest of the members with us. But do you see for that first meeting? I think that there's what we've got in this forward plan is we've got a hangover from some of the scrutiny committees that have just been put through. I'm not saying we're ignoring everything. What I'm saying is we need to just go through and take off a lot of things that I believe are just inappropriate because they're scrutiny. I'm going to go Rebecca, then Pete, then Bridget. So Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to follow up actually with what Daryl said and what you've just said. It comes back to we've got a meeting in October. The only thing on it is housing. Yeah. Tony Coombs very helpfully mentioned that actually has gone through a policy development of some kind somewhere else. Yeah. So the most immediate thing potentially is to get a really good item for the agenda in October and maybe look at elements of those housing papers which are to do with people and health rather than structure. So I don't know those papers at all. Tony Coombs no doubt would be able to advise us which elements we look at, but I'm all set for clean slate in my view. I agree with you, Andrew.
Okay, I'm going to go to Pete.
I mean, I completely agree with everything that's just been said. The plea is, please don't forget those of us new to all of this, and some sort of scene setting would be really helpful because there's, issues are coming out thick and fast as we've been talking, and as a new boy, as some of the others are as well, I'm struggling to keep up with it.
Pete, I think you've got to recognise that we're all new to this. The new Dorset Council, this is a new committee, but I understand you. I think it won't be completely bare and completely naked, if you see what I mean. There will be a steer. Bridget, and then Tony, and then Anthony. Sorry.
Thanks,
Bridget.
Andrew. Thank you. Just a quick one on the Bridget Downton, head of corporate communications and business intelligence for members of the committee who might not know me, and also for members of the public who might be watching and don't know me. So just to say, you mentioned that some of the items had come from previous plans for scrutiny committee, which is right, but some of those items on there have been put on since the idea of the new committees came into being, and I'm thinking particularly around the performance data. So we've written a performance framework which has been agreed, which took into account the role of the new committees. So it's clearly up to the chairs if they don't want to receive that information. Of course it is, although I hear Councillor Turner that I know Darryl will want to receive it, and we've had email exchanges about that. But just to assure you that some of the things on there were put on there in light of the role as set out in the Constitution around an overview committee rather than the old scrutiny committees. That's all I want to say. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget. And I think as members we are aware of that. There obviously are statutory responsibilities as put in under the under the Dorset Council manifesto. I think that what we need, however, I'm still going for a bit of a fresh slate, because we can then look to see what we need to do, what we're statutorily responsible for doing, and then I think we can reduce it down slightly, because I don't want this to be a case of process and needless bureaucracy, and filling it up for the sake of filling it up. And
can I just say, Andrew, for the avoidance of doubt, the performance stuff isn't statutory. You absolutely don't have to have it. It's fine if you. So I wasn't being precious about those items needing to stay. I'm more than happy for them not. It's fine. But
I know you see, Bridget, I disagree with you. I think according to to what's in the I think it's in there. I think just going back to it's in the agenda that we're responsible for monitoring. So I think it would be items like that would be in there. There we go. And Darryl's just put up that we have to monitor. So I think for me, I'm looking to members that I would like a clear slate, and then I would like to repopulate our forward plan by looking at the cabinet forward plan and what we have to statutorily do as a committee. And members happy with that? I'm trying to get a clear steer, but it's quite difficult when everyone's on, when I can't see everyone. Darryl, I know that you perhaps don't agree, but is everyone happy with that line of thinking?
Can I just have a quick comment?
Fancy.
I think two things. One of which is that everything we do needs to be informed by the council plan. So everything we do should be informed by that. So we should have a clear understanding that we are working to deliver the council plan. So I think that's the kind of overall element of it. And we've got to focus our time on the things that matter. So we were talking about performance management just now. Clearly it's important, but is meeting time on the subject important, especially when you could have a system set up on our laptops so that we can directly access the performance data, ask questions on it, and save having to have formal meetings to do precisely the same thing.
Anthony, that's a breath of fresh air, and I think that would be the way forwards if we could do that. I think that's brilliant. But yeah, I'm happy. So I'm just aware of time. Has anyone got any more to add to this? Okay, fabulous. So if members are happy, I think that what we're going to do now is we're going to say we're going to wipe the forward plan clean, and then we will come together online and we will look at things like the corporate plan, the council's agenda moving forwards, and the cabinet agenda and the cabinet forward plan, and repopulate as we feel fit, including making a note of our statutory responsibilities as a committee. Okay. All right, fab. I'm pushing forwards because that is the end of that agenda item. Brilliant. Okay, where are we? So that brings the end of the committee to a close. Okay, so
Chairman,
yeah,
it's Helen. You just need to note that there are no urgent items and there is no exempt business.
I am. I'm just slowly going through my agenda.
Sorry.
You're one step ahead of me, Helen.
Sorry.
Best really that it's all right. Just say it happens. I'm a bit slow. So there are no further agenda items. There's no urgent business.
Andrew, could I just ask, didn't we have the general practice access and service provision paper as a supplement?
No.
That's gone, is it? Okay, thanks.
No, that's something that I'm not aware of. Okay, fabulous. Okay, so I'm ending the meeting at 11:34.
Thank you.
And just to note, actually, Helen, when is the next meeting?
She said 22nd of October.
Okay.
Sorry, 27th of October.
Okay, all right, fine, fabulous. There we go, members. 27th of October. All right, keep safe and see you all soon.